At a Navy Marine joint base, the atmosphere in the briefing room crackles with tension. A woman in standard fatigue sits quietly, reviewing logistics data. She wears no visible insignia, her uniform stripped of decoration. The Marine commander notices her silence and smirks. "You're awfully quiet, soldier. What's your rank?" The men chuckle. "What are you? A corporal? A sergeant?" She looks up slowly, eyes sharp but calm. "4-star general," she replies. The room goes dead silent. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more moments where quiet strength speaks louder than rank. The commander's face drains of color as he reads her file. Her name is classified under Joint Special Operations Command. The fluorescent lights in the secure briefing room at Joint Naval Base Havston buzzed with the same intensity as the officers gathered around the tactical display. Maps and surveillance images covered the central table, bathed in harsh white light that cast sharp shadows across serious faces. Commander Thaddeus Merrick stood at the head of the table, his broad shoulders squared beneath his impeccably pressed uniform. "Intelligence confirms hostile movement through these corridors," Merrick said, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. He traced a line across the digital map with his index finger. "Operation Shadowfall requires precision timing. We'll have a 3-minute window to extract the asset before reinforcements arrive." The 7 Marine officers surrounding him nodded in unison. Lieutenant Myers, the youngest of the group, leaned forward to study the terrain markings. "Sir, what about alternative extraction routes if primary is compromised?" Merrick's mouth tightened into a thin line. "There won't be alternatives. We execute perfectly or not at all." From the back of the room came the subtle sound of someone shifting position. Heads turned toward the source. A woman in standard issue fatigues who stood near the wall, silently reviewing data on a tablet. She wore no visible rank insignia or decorations, her uniform notably plain against the metal-adorned officers at the table. Merrick paused, noticing the distraction she'd created. "Is there a problem?" The woman looked up briefly, her gray eyes meeting his before returning to her tablet. "The intel suggests a secondary patrol pattern in this quadrant. Your window may be closer to 90 seconds. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The officers exchanged glances, wondering who this unmarked woman was to question Commander Merrick's assessment. Merrick's expression hardened as he studied her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, her posture military straight but relaxed in a way that suggested years of service. Something about her calm demeanor disrupted the ordered hierarchy of his briefing room. "You're awfully quiet back there," he said, a hint of amusement entering his voice. The other officers caught his tone and straightened, sensing the subtle shift in the room's power dynamic. "What's your clearance level anyway?" She continued reviewing the data, making notes with efficient movements. Merrick stepped away from the table, moving toward her with deliberate steps. The officers watched, a few smiling slightly at the approaching confrontation. "What are you, supply chain liaison? Administrative staff?" His tone grew increasingly patronizing. The woman finally looked up, her face composed. Nothing in her expression revealed discomfort at being the center of attention. "I'm asking you a direct question, soldier," Merrick said, his voice sharpening. "What's your rank?" The room fell silent. Even the constant hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade away. "That's not relevant to the mission parameters, Commander," she replied, her voice quiet, but carrying clearly to every corner of the room. Lieutenant Myers inhaled sharply at her response. No one spoke to Commander Merrick that way, especially not someone without visible rank. Merrick's eyes narrowed. "Everything in my briefing room is relevant when I say it is." The woman held his gaze without challenging or submitting, a perfect neutral that somehow felt more disruptive than either alternative would have been. After several tense seconds, Merrick turned back to the table. "As I was saying, gentlemen, our infiltration route will follow this ridgeline." But something had changed in the room. Several officers glanced back at the woman, curiosity replacing their initial dismissal. Lieutenant Commander Zephyr Donovan studied her longer than the others, a slight frown creasing his forehead, as though trying to place a half-forgotten face. The briefing continued for another 20 minutes, with Merrick detailing each phase of Operation Shadowfall. The woman remained silent, her presence a strange counterweight to Merrick's commanding performance. As he reached the extraction phase, Merrick gestured to the digital map. "We'll have aerial support on standby, but terrain will limit visibility. The cloud cover forecasted for the operation window will further compromise aerial surveillance," the woman said without looking up from her tablet. Merrick's jaw tightened visibly. "We'll correct these routes later when the actual tactical team reviews them." His dismissive gesture toward her was meant to end both her input and the briefing. As officers filed out, Lieutenant Commander Donovan lingered, watching the woman with a puzzled expression. He approached her as she collected her tablet. "Have we met before?" he asked quietly. "You seem familiar." She studied his face for a moment. "I don't believe so, Lieutenant Commander." "Zephyr Donovan," he offered, extending his hand. She hesitated before accepting the handshake. "Evanthea? Just Evanthea?" he asked with a slight smile. "For now," she replied. Donovan nodded slowly. "Well, just Evanthea. Your assessment about the patrol patterns matches what my team observed last month in the same region. I'm surprised you have access to that intel." "Information flows to where it's needed," she said, moving toward the door. "Not always," Donovan replied. "Sometimes it gets stuck behind rank and protocol." Something in her expression shifted, the barest acknowledgement of his observation. Then she was gone, leaving Donovan standing alone in the emptying briefing room. Morning brought low clouds and a fine mist that shrouded the training grounds in gray. Combat drills were underway, with Merrick's team running through tactical formations. Evanthea observed from the edge of the field, her presence seemingly forgotten in the intensity of the exercises. Lieutenant Myers struggled with calibrating the targeting system on a new piece of equipment, his frustration growing visible as the drill continued around him. Evanthea approached silently, watching his attempts for several moments before stepping closer. "The gyroscopic stabilizer needs to be reset after transport," she said quietly. Myers looked up, surprised at her presence. "I've reset it twice already." "Not the primary," she explained, reaching for the device. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, he handed it over. Her fingers moved across the equipment with practiced precision, accessing a secondary reset mechanism hidden beneath an access panel. Within seconds, the targeting system illuminated properly. "How did you know that was there?" Myers asked, clearly impressed. "I've seen these fail in the field," she answered, handing it back. "The manual doesn't cover the transport sensitivity issues." Myers nodded appreciatively. "Thanks. I would have wasted the entire drill troubleshooting." "Lieutenant," Commander Merrick's voice cut across the training ground. He strode toward them, his expression darkening as he recognized Evanthea. "Return to your position." Myers quickly rejoined his squad, leaving Evanthea facing Merrick alone. "Giving orders now?" he called out, loud enough for nearby officers to hear. "What exactly is your role here?" Several officers paused their activities, turning to watch the confrontation. "I'm here to assess readiness," she answered calmly. "Under whose authority?" Merrick demanded, closing the distance between them. "JSOC," she replied, referencing Joint Special Operations Command. Merrick scoffed, looking her up and down with undisguised skepticism. "JSOC doesn't send unranked personnel to assess my team." He stepped closer, using his height advantage to emphasize the power disparity between them. "Let me see your credentials." Without protest, she reached into her pocket and handed him an identification card. Merrick's expression shifted as he read it, surprise briefly crossing his features before he masked it with a dismissive laugh. "This clearance level doesn't match any protocols I've seen." He handed the card back with clear disbelief. "Report to my office at 1400 hours for verification." As Evanthea walked away, she passed a group of junior officers who had been watching the exchange. Their whispers followed her. "Who shows up without proper insignia at a joint base? Must be civilian contractor playing dress-up." "Did you see Merrick's face, though? Something on that ID spooked him." She continued past them without acknowledgement, her pace unhurried despite the attention. Lieutenant Commander Donovan caught up to her at the edge of the training grounds. "You ran Talon Strike in 19, didn't you?" he asked quietly, falling into step beside her. She stopped, studying him with new intensity. "That operation remains classified, Lieutenant Commander." "My brother was with the 5th Group," Donovan continued, his voice low. "Said someone pulled his team out when intel went sideways. Never saw their face, but heard a woman gave the orders that saved their lives." Evanthea's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her eyes, a brief recognition before the professional mask returned. "Tell your brother the bourbon he left at the extraction point was appreciated," she finally said. Donovan's eyes widened slightly. "So it was you." "I never confirmed that, Lieutenant Commander." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "And neither will you." She resumed walking, leaving Donovan staring after her with newfound respect. The base commander's office featured the expected military precision. Awards and commendations arranged in perfect symmetry on the walls. Desk clear of all but essential items. Commander Merrick stood behind his desk as Avanthia entered exactly at 1400 hours, neither early nor late. "Close the door," he ordered. She complied, noting the presence of a third person in the room. A naval officer sitting quietly in the corner chair, watching their interaction with sharp eyes. "Your presence is disrupting my command," Merrick began, pacing behind his desk. "No identification, no rank insignia, vague authorization. My team is preparing for a critical operation, and you're introducing unnecessary variables." "Variables exist whether I identify them or not, Commander," she replied. Merrick's frustration visibly grew. JSOC follows chain of command protocols. If they had concerns about Operation Shadowfall, they would have communicated through proper channels. "Some concerns require direct observation," Avanthia said. "By whom? Someone who won't even state their rank?" Merrick's voice rose slightly. "This isn't how military assessment works." "Do you always question your superior officers this way?" The naval officer in the corner suddenly interjected. Merrick froze, turning toward the man who had remained silent until now. "Superior officer?" He laughed sharply. "She's not even wearing—" "She doesn't need to," the naval officer said carefully, standing to reveal the insignia of a captain. "Captain Lachlan Wright, Naval Intelligence." Merrick's expression hardened. "With respect, Captain, even if she's operating under JSOC authority, my command should have been properly notified." "You were notified," Wright replied, "just not in the way you expected." Avanthia remained perfectly still during this exchange. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a new weight. "Commander Merrick, Operation Shadowfall has been compromised. That's why I'm here. Someone at this base is selling intelligence." "That's impossible," Merrick said, but doubt crept into his voice. "My team undergoes rigorous security protocols. 3 previous operations failed with similar patterns," Avanthia continued. "Your team's security protocols have been flagged at the highest levels." "By whom?" Merrick demanded. "By me," she said simply. The admission hung in the air between them, reshaping the dynamics of the room. Captain Wright moved toward the door. "I suggest you listen carefully to what she has to say, Commander." He nodded respectfully to Avanthia before leaving, closing the door behind him. Merrick remained standing, his expression a complex mix of confusion, anger, and growing concern. "Who are you?" he asked, his tone considerably altered from their previous encounters. "Someone trying to prevent another failed mission and lost lives," she answered. "Your Operation Shadowfall has critical vulnerabilities that need to be addressed before deployment." Merrick slowly sat down, the confrontational edge leaving his posture. "What vulnerabilities?" "Information compartmentalization has been compromised. Certain details are reaching individuals who shouldn't have access." She moved to the digital display on his wall, activating it with practiced familiarity that revealed her comfort with command technology. "May I?" He nodded, watching as she pulled up Operation Shadowfall's security logs. Her fingers moved across the interface with expert precision, accessing deeper layers of the system than most officers could navigate. "These access points show irregular patterns," she said, highlighting several entries. "Information flowing where it shouldn't." Merrick studied the display, his tactical mind processing the implications. "This could be explained by system updates or cross-training." "It could," she acknowledged, "but combined with the failure patterns from previous operations, it suggests deliberate information extraction." For the first time, Merrick regarded her with something approaching professional respect. "What do you recommend?" "Feed controlled misinformation through these channels. Watch where it goes. Maintain the appearance of normal operation while we identify the source." The "we" wasn't lost on Merrick. Whatever her real identity, she was now inserting herself directly into his command structure. "I'll need time to consider this," he said finally. "Time is something we don't have," Avanthia replied. "Operation Shadowfall deploys in 72 hours. "I'm still in command here," Merrick reminded her, some of his earlier resistance returning. "For now," she said, her words carrying a weight that lingered in the room after she departed. Night fell over the base, bringing with it a heavy rain that drummed against the windows of the officers' quarters. Evanthea sat alone in her assigned room, the space revealing nothing of its temporary occupant. No personal items, no photographs, nothing to suggest individuality or connection. She removed her standard issue jacket, revealing a compression shirt beneath. In the mirror's reflection, severe scarring ran across her right shoulder and upper back, the distinctive pattern of wounds from a high-explosive fragmentation device. The kind of injury that ended most military careers, or at least relegated the survivor to desk duty. From a secure case beneath her bed, she withdrew a small metal box. It opened to her thumbprint, revealing a silver insignia she never wore and a worn photograph of a younger version of herself, standing beside the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Both wore formal dress uniforms in the image, medals glinting under official photography lights. Evanthea activated a secure communication device. Its signal scrambled beyond conventional detection capabilities. "Authentication Omega-74 Delta," she spoke quietly into the device. After a brief pause, a male voice responded, "Authenticated. Report status." "Sir, the security breach is worse than we thought. I'll need to accelerate the timeline." "Resistance?" "Expected levels. Captain Wright has provided necessary support." "And Commander Merrick?" Evanthea paused, considering her assessment. Competent, but overconfident. Typical profile of officers who rose quickly during the extended conflicts. He values rank over substance. "Your recommendation?" "Salvageable, depending on his response to what comes next." "Understood. You have full operational authority. Use it as needed." "Yes, sir." The communication ended with the same abruptness it had begun. Evanthea returned the insignia and photograph to their case, securing it once more beneath her bed. As she moved to close the blinds, she noticed Lieutenant Commander Donovan walking through the rain toward the officers' club. His earlier recognition of her connection to Talon Strike represented both a risk and an opportunity. People with good situational awareness noticed details others missed, including security breaches. The rain continued through the night, washing away footprints and erasing visible trails across the base. By morning, the world appeared cleaner but less defined, boundaries blurred by lingering mist that rose from the wet ground. Evanthea began her day before sunrise, running the perimeter of the base in the gray pre-dawn light. Her pace was measured and sustainable, not the eager sprint of young officers proving themselves, but the consistent rhythm of someone who understood that endurance mattered more than initial speed. As she completed her third circuit, she noticed Lieutenant Commander Donovan waiting near the training facility entrance, 2 steaming cups in hand. "Coffee?" he offered as she approached. "Black, no sugar, military standard." She slowed but didn't stop. "How did you know my schedule?" "I didn't," he admitted. "I've been here since 0500, figured you for an early riser." She completed another 20 meters before circling back, accepting the cup with a nod of thanks. The coffee was strong and bitter, exactly what the early hour demanded. "You're different from most JSOC visitors we get," Donovan observed. "How many have you met?" she asked. "3 that I know of, probably more that I don't. They usually arrive with entourages and demand immediate access to everything." "Effectiveness isn't always loud," she replied. Donovan smiled slightly. "That's what I thought when I saw you in the briefing. You were reading everyone, not just the mission data." "People reveal more than they realize," she agreed, sipping the coffee. "Including me? Especially you, Lieutenant Commander. You notice things others miss, but keep your observations to yourself. That's rare." Before he could respond, both their secure communications devices activated simultaneously. The base-wide alert tone echoed across the grounds, a critical security notification. "All officers report to Command Center. Security protocol echo in effect." They exchanged a glance of professional concern before moving quickly toward the central facility, joining streams of personnel responding to the alert. The command center hummed with controlled urgency as officers took their stations. Screens displayed security lockdown procedures initiating across the base, automated protocols designed to contain information breaches. Commander Merrick stood at the central console, barking orders as reports flowed in from different departments. "Network isolation confirmed. All outbound communications suspended. internal systems moving to secure backup.